Committee meeting will come to order. Clerk, call the roll.
All right, this is the Government Operations Public Safety Public Service meeting. This is Tuesday, September 8, 2015. We're at 6 p.m. Council Sachetta.
Here.
Council McKinnon.
Here.
I have Council Delasola.
Here.
Council Hangan.
Here.
And I have Council Capone.
Here.
We
Please
do have
stand
a
and salute the flag. Clerk, call the first. Clerk, read the items 1 and 2, please.
Yeah, if we could take them collectively.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, item number 1. This is a resolution up at Council John Leo McKinnon to invite every homecoming addiction group to discuss drug addiction. Item number 2 is also a resolution up by Council John Leo McKinnon. The Ever Residents Overcoming Addiction Organization explain what resources are out there.
Could we have the Ever Overcoming Addiction come before us? Just
Please state your name and address, please.
Patty Scalise, 35 Cross Street, Everett, Mass.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm really nervous, sorry.
take your time, don't be.
September is National Recovery Month. It's a month dedicated to increasing awareness and understanding of mental and substance use, and also celebrating those who are in recovery. Recovery starts when the detoxing process ends. Detox is done elsewhere, hospitals, clinics, etc. It's when the recovering addict returns to their community that we must offer the most support and compassion as they embark on their road to recovery. Addiction is a lifelong battle and constant work. Constant work is required to maintain recovery, and it is vital that we as a community encourage and support all their efforts to stay in recovery, and in doing so, we will also aid in removing the stigma associated with addiction. I remember when I was growing up, teen pregnancy was happening at an alarming rate, and kids were tucked away until their babies were born, never finishing school. I was one of those kids. I didn't think it would ever happen to me. Famous last words. Teen pregnancy has dropped dramatically due to the fact people, as a community, understood that there was a serious need for action. Through this awareness came sex ed classes, more availability to condoms. Teen health centers were started, so if you ever found yourself in that situation, the resources needed to help you succeed could be found at every corner. The stigma became less prevalent, and with that, we were given a real chance to thrive. We need the same kind of resources and education in our schools and community for this opiate crisis. Times have changed, and we must change with them. Let's help change the stigma of addiction and recovery. It starts with us as individuals in the way we think, and as a community in the way we help. It is an epidemic, and if we're not willing to see that, then we were all part of the problem, not the solution. Prevention, awareness, and recovery. Our goal is to just resources, prevention, get it out there, get some programs in place in the city so that the kids that do come back here can thrive and recovery is possible, and we need to stop the stigma.
Mr. Chairman.
Council McKinnon?
Yeah, the resources that you have, do you have a list of resources, numbers? and-
Yes.
Okay.
Here you are. This is what we give out. And this pamphlet is something we made in, these are the people we deal with. There's a lot of resources out there, but we find that in some of Everett Overcoming Addiction, and some of we've formed like a little group, and we all share the same resources and community outreach.
Okay, can you just, I mean, there's a number of, like, resources here. Could you just touch on a couple of them, and, like, if you have phone numbers or anything like that?
Yep,
could you touch on
Banyan Treatment Center, it's Matt Gainham, he's recovering advocate. His number is 1-855-903-1770. Keith Laporta, he's a community outreach coordinator, and he actually, you call him and he'll go do interventions. His number is 857-312-1627. Heroin Killing My Town, Billy Pfaff, 1-844-437-6465. And then there's local detoxes.
Okay. Now, are these, some of these, are they longer than the 7-day spin cycle, ones that are typically out there? Are they a little bit longer? Or how are these compared to the ones that were currently used?
Banyan and Heroin Killing My Town, they're long-term. They can get you into long-term. The local detoxes, Tewksbury, Danvers, Spectrum, places like that, you have to work with the counselors. And in October, the insurance is mandatory to pay for 30 days, so that should help.
Is that a state law?
Yes.
And do you know?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have that on anywhere? The state
No,
law?
I don't.
Okay, we'll look it up. So that's going into effect in October?
Yes.
Okay,
That passed last year through the State House.
all right. And that's a 30-day mandatory?
Yes, insurance companies will have to pay the 30 days.
Okay.
Right now, they're only required to pay 5-7 spin cycle, and then they're right back out there.
No, I mean, you're seeing it out there now,
Yes,
so.
yes.
That, which works?
Long-term,
Long-term?
yes.
Compared to, now,
Yeah.
is there any longer than 30 days?
There's residential, some insurance companies will pay for that, and it's self-paid, scholarships or whatever.
Okay. Anything else you want to share tonight with us?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that you cannot make an addict get clean, we know this, but when they're ready, we should have the resources out there, because that window of clarity for them is very short, and it's hard for a parent to try to navigate a system that is just full with all this information. If we can just get it to one centralized location, like if I came up here, here's a list. Because like I said, that window of opportunity and clarity is so short for an addict when they reach out. And you might not get that back for 6 months.
Are these nonprofit groups that you've mentioned tonight?
No, they're just contacts we met,
Just contacts? Okay.
yeah.
I have no further questions.
Counsel Capone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, Patty, first of all, thank you very much for all of the effort and the time. And I know how important the cause is to you and how important it is to all of us.
Yes.
And I really appreciate, and I know that we all appreciate, the effort and the coordination that you've done here. You've got a couple of, as you mentioned, September is the month. There's some events. Did you want to take a moment just to
Yes.
highlight some of the events?
The events that Everett Overcoming Addiction is part of is the Turn It Around campaign in Charlestown, and that's surrounding communities. Anybody's welcomed. It's 3 to 6 at Eden Street Park, and then the Mayor's First Say No to Drugs campaign.
And what's the date on that, Patty?
Oh, tomorrow, September 9th.
Okay.
Might help if I put these on. And then the Mayor's First Say No to Drug campaign is September 21st, 7 o'clock at the Conley Center, and all are welcome to that. It's the first kickoff, and trying to find what we can do as a community and as a group if we all just work together, and just, it will make things easier. And then September 1st is the MORE Recovery Month celebration. That's at the State House. It starts at City Hall Plaza, where they'll rally and they'll walk to the State House, and we spend the day at the State House lobbying, and there's speakers there, and the Attorney General's coming to speak. Senator John Keenan, Flanagan, and House Speaker Robert DeLeo is set to speak for that, and that's from 9 to 3. It's an all-day event at the State House. And Friday, September 25th, from 6:30 to 10:30 is Everett Overcoming Addiction, partnership with Paris Art Gallery, Everett Community Partnership, Substance Abuse Coalition. We're putting on an art opening and a gallery reception, and just to celebrate the people in recovery. And Monday, September 28th, anonymous people screening at Everett High School, 6 to 8. I don't really know much about that event. All I know is that it's that day, and they'll show the movie, Anonymous People, and it's a great movie.
Wonderful. And have you, these dates for the month of September and the general contact information with regards to support, assistance that's out there, have you contacted ECTV and provided them with this information? Because I'm sure that they would run it if you could get that to them.
I can certainly do that.
Yeah, it's a low-cost way to, get the word out to as many people as
Yeah.
possible. So,
Yeah.
again, thank you very much for everything you're doing. Anything we can do to help, you let us know. And
Thank
if you
you.
get that to ECTV, both events and
Yeah.
ongoing information about support, who to contact, just somewhere to start and go from there. So,
Yeah,
thank
and
you-
it's
thank you
not
again.
an easy thing to discuss, and
Yeah.
you get an awful lot of doors shut, and no one really wants to talk about it. But it's there, and it's getting worse, and we need to help the kids that are coming up. We need to really get prevention out there. And you have a lot of grandparents raising their children, their grandchildren, because their parents are addicts. And the schools need to know that, and plans have to be in place for those children, because they're at a higher risk.
Sure.
It's just the way it goes.
Yeah. Thank you for your efforts, Patty. I have no other questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Council Mangan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Patty, again, thank you for all your efforts, everything you do with this cause. In terms of funding, on a state level and also on a city level, we just deal with the city of Everett here. Do you feel there's enough funding, or do you feel that it's inadequate, or do you feel like it's in good shape right now in terms of the resources, in terms of, putting the dollars in to make sure that we combat this?
Me personally, I think it's inadequate, and that's only from my own experience with dealing with my son who's an addict. And when this all started, I got no resources, and I haven't seen that turnaround. I know they're working on it, but in a room talking about it, that's good, but you have to get it to the public. You have to get it out there. Like, I was just in your lobby. There's stuff about West Nile virus. There's stuff about other stuff. I didn't see anything out there about addiction, even a flyer, something. It's right there in your lobby, and this is my own personal experience, so, and I know what I've went through for the last 3 years, so.
Okay, so you definitely think that from your view, from what you see, that you believe it's a little inadequate, and whether it's on the city's part, there could be more resources put into
Yes,
funding
absolutely,
some more.
absolutely.
Okay.
Like, I'll go on your City of Everett website, have a little tab there, and I know I read in the paper that it was there, and I looked again, and I didn't see anything.
Okay.
And I navigated that, and it can't be that hard. Like, for us, for a parent who suffers, you just don't have that sort of time to just try to do all that. But we are making strides, I will give you that. We are making strides with the Narcan, with the police, and all the first responders carrying it. We are making strides, but it's just got to get to the public.
Okay, thank you so much.
Council Delasola?
Patty, echo the words of my colleagues. Thank you, everybody here that's involved in this, helping this cause. I was down Sacramone Park with a few of my colleagues a while back, and we had that gathering, and like you said, it could happen to anybody anywhere. I mean, I was down there, and I saw families and kids that I had, I'll call them children, that I had in youth sports that I couldn't believe if they were involved or had the addiction.
Yeah.
And I was just shocked of how big this is growing, which
Yeah.
is not a good thing. My question to you, has the schools have anything in the schools, even, I know you're talking about have the pamphlets up here. Are there any pamphlets at the high school or even a junior high school?
I've never been to the high school, so I'm not quite sure. I haven't been there since my kid. But I have a granddaughter that goes to elementary school, and I have custody of her. And she's very vocal about her parents' addiction because she's seen too much for a small child. And she went to her counselors, and she discussed, what went on. And it's just stories from the past, but their response was to call DCF. And they came to my door, and my granddaughter was just nervous that, oh no, they're gonna take me out of my Nana's too. I think it's just, we need to just maybe get to know these kids, where they come from. You know that they've been taken out of that environment. Let's work with them. Let's make them comfortable to talk about it. And drugs is a hard thing to talk about. And we weren't prepared for this. Nobody was. But now that you have a lot of little children that parents are addicts, they need to know how to talk to the kids.
Okay, I will talk to the school committee and see if we could have something up there at the School for Education. If
Yeah.
it's even, have a class on it, or have the pamphlets up there, and they can see the counselors with the pamphlets and explain to them what's going on. Try to catch them
In middle
At a
school.
younger age,
Yeah, middle
correct.
school, like, it's
to
just-
stop it before it gets
Yeah,
to a certain point.
yes.
All right, thank you again.
Yeah, and like you said, the kids you've seen, it's the stigma and shame that comes with addiction, and that's what we need to break, that people need to be able to talk about it, that it's okay. I mean, it's not something we're proud of. I didn't want to raise an addict, and I'm pretty sure he didn't want to be an addict. But it's the way that it happens, and we have to break that. Families should be able to talk about it without feeling so bad.
Correct. All right, thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
No, I'd just like to echo the sentiment of my colleague, Mr. Capone. Just if we could get this pamphlet, some of the resources out on ECTV, I'd like to make that in form of motion. And also, if you could get anything that we would like onto ECTV to see if we can get more involvement with them, I think that would be a great idea. So that would be a start anyway, just to have dates and times and different functions that are going on throughout, this month of September. So if we could do that, that would be great.
Yeah.
Motion has been made, seconded to refer this to Everett Cable TV and to put it
Have
on.
Mrs. Scalise just provide them information on the monthly activities and also resources that are available.
Very good idea. Thank you for your
Thank
time
you.
and your input.
All right,
you for
thanks.
bringing
Can I just say one more thing? And I'm sorry, I forgot about this, but you talked about it at the last meeting. The shop containers, apparently they're where they need to be. So they're at the police station and they're at Everett City Hall. So if people need to get rid of their works or their needles, those places,
Yep.
shops, yeah. The language, I'm trying. But those are available too, so we can just try to lower the amount of needles we're finding in the parks and the streets.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Did we take a vote on that motion, by the way? I don't recall.
Oh,
Excuse the customary thanks.
thank you.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Item number 3. This is a resolution by Councilor John Leo McKinnon. The Autism Race Coordinators, Sean Coyle, appeared this meeting to obtain general information and set up a date for next year.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I don't see Mr. Coyle in the audience, so what I'd like to do is grant further time on this, and because we have a couple of people here, I know on the next piece on the agenda, we have Councilman Napolitano's here, so if we could just lay this over.
We're going to take item number 4 and lay this on the table. Excuse me. Oh, item 3. We're going to lay item 3 on the table and take item number 4. Is that correct? Yeah. Clerk, read item number 4.
All right, item number 4. This is a resolution by Councilor Peter Napolitano that the Everett Police consider equipping officers and body cameras.
I'd like to invite the sponsor, Peter Napolitano.
We have
Mr.
the
Chairman,
sponsor and the captain.
Yes,
Also, Captain Busteri.
Captain. Yeah. All in favor, inviting these gentlemen? Aye.
Aye.
Good evening. Peter Napolitano, 169 Carr Street, Everett, Mass. The reason I put this piece before us is that, for the last year, there's been a lot of exposure on the police, a lot of different incidents have happened nationally. And part of the solution that I've seen a lot of, that I've been reading a lot in different communities is is body cameras. Now, what kind of put me on the edge is I saw an article on Chronicle about the city of Methuen. Methuen hasn't really embraced this. And doing some research, talking to some of the officers up there, talking to some of the elected officials up there, they find that having these cameras on our offices do two things. First of all, it creates a more comfortable environment for the officer, because first of all, everything that is going on with him is being filmed. That means that situations where people might antagonize or create a situation that draws the officer into a negative situation, that's now being viewed. Additionally, it helps keep people in check. So this way here, where you might be, you're constantly aware that you're being viewed, covered. It puts the officer in a position where he's got to have to always put the best foot forward. It's a tough job, and and in a lot of cases, it's a thankless job. Our officers go out there; they do a lot to put their lives on the line and keep our community safe. But there's got to be something that's going to protect them as well. Methuen has found a higher rate of convictions with the camera evidence. So there's a lot of other facets that go along with this. And I just think that it's a good idea that we at least take a look at this. Our community's changing. We just had an incident last month with a shooting, high profile. We've got the casino coming in. We're going to have other people coming into the city. We're drawing a different type of resident from here, from Boston, from Somerville. I was talking with the mayor's office. The Section 8 rate is higher, so you're getting people who don't have as much vested interest in the community here. We've got to have a way to be able to keep the people who do have a vested interest safe, keep our officers safe, and I think this is a way, an avenue that we should at least explore. Okay, so that's why I put this on here. I know the chief wasn't able to make it this evening, but we has sent a representative, and I'm very interested in hearing what they have to say on it as well.
Councilor McKinnon?
Could we hear from Captain Basterio on this? I got two questions to it, Captain. One would be the unions, what they would be thinking of this, and then also, has this been mulled over yet and digested at the police station as well throughout the rank and file?
Okay, I don't know if the union, we haven't gotten an opinion from the union, but about 2 months ago, we have tasers, as you know, and we did bring in the taser company to give us a quote on what it would cost to, put a camera on everyone. And the cost on our size department would probably be $350,000 to $550,000. The chief's opinion right now is that he doesn't believe, we need him at this point. We don't have a history of abuse. We don't receive, we're not receiving complaints of abuse. In fact, we have software that we had purchased in past year that it's an early one software, so it tells us, whether it's, regular citizen complaints or anything, so it gives us a heads up. Chief stressed that we do a lot of, we're in the community, we do a lot of interaction with the community, and he thinks right now that's sufficient. Besides that, the state has not come down with any direction, so there's a lot of unanswered questions. Do we have a camera? Are we allowed to walk in a private residence and film inside? If we go to a scene and somebody walks up to us, as they do, and they want to point somebody out, is that person now on camera? And, and they want to remain anonymous. How long does the film have to be stored for? Is it open to public records? Can somebody walk down and say, I want to see the camera from yesterday? So these are all questions that have not been answered, because obviously it's new. But again, the cost right now is probably prohibitive. I mean, it wouldn't be the top of our agenda. There's a lot of other items I think we would need prior to that, including, you know, we have radios that we got through Irasi. They're coming up to the end of their, you know, life, and those alone go $7,000 per officer, 102 officers. So there's a lot of other places we think, you know, we could spend that money. I mean, we do outreach in the city, you know, whether it's, you know, school resource offices. We have a quarterly meeting with the immigrant, you know, community, you know, involved with Bishop Brown's Church, Grace Episcopal Church on Norwood Street. So we don't think at this time it's, you know, it's beneficial to our police department.
I can't speak for the sponsor, but I think the intent was a good intent on protecting the officers. You see different states and different departments now going to this type of action. So I think that maybe that was the intent. I can't speak for the sponsor, but I'll let him elaborate on that if he would.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, you bring up, you know, the officer brings, Catherine brings up the radio issue. We approved that on the recent capital improvements budget. So, I mean, the thing is, we are addressing equipment issues. You know, we know that we just approved money to add a new generation tasers on our offices. These are just tools, okay? If we look back at what an officer carried 30 years ago, you know, they didn't carry tasers. At best, they might have carried mace. But, you know, and as history has shown, mace can sometimes backfire on the officer. You know, things have changed now. Body armor is something that they wear on the constant day of their job. They're not shot at every day. So the idea of having, of talking about holding cameras off until there's more direction, you know, that doesn't make sense to me, because you don't wait until the accident happens to then create the solution. That's too late. You know, you need to evolve and move through this. Now, you know, $500,000 to equip the officers with cameras. You know, does an officer on duty inside the station necessarily need to be carrying a camera? Not necessarily. You know, we've phased in equipment. We've phased in radios. We've been able to upgrade and modernize the equipment. You know, have we done any communicating with any of the departments that are physically using that tool today? As I mentioned, I keep referring back to Methuen, because it was a very informative half an hour on Chronicle. And then talking to them, I know they've done the research. They looked into the laws. They checked into this, you know. And, you know, having a conversation amongst yourselves in the department is one thing, but reaching out to other departments that have already asked and answered these questions, I would think that would be the more prudent solution. Now, I'm not saying we run out and equip every officer with cameras today, but I think we need to look at this. If we're going to continue to provide a safe community, and the problems aren't happening with and the outreach is great, but the problems are not happening with members of Bishop Brown's Church or members of the Immaculate Church or any of the church groups. The problems are happening with people that have no connection with our community, that don't get themselves involved, that the people that aren't going to take the time to get to know who the officer is, the officer to them is just a big target if they get in their way. And that's the risk that our officers have day to day. I think it's important that we explore other avenues to make their job safer, give them tools to help their arrest rate by giving them further evidence. I know Methuen has documentation on what they've considered, how much their conviction rate has increased since the implementation of these cameras. That's valid information. But that's what we need to look at. And that's all I'm doing, is just trying to start a dialogue so we start researching to see if this is something that will work for us.
I just have one more. I'd like to, I mean, just from a standpoint for legal reasons, I'd like to have our city solicitor before us.
City solicitor?
Yes.
Would the city solicitor come forward, please?
Good evening.
Good evening. I just want a legal opinion on this. And we would obviously be going through negotiations with the police department at this point if we were going to do something like this contractually, correct?
We would actually be bargaining over the impact of the cameras. It's not a mandatory subject of bargaining, so it wouldn't be collective bargaining, it would be impact bargaining.
Impact, okay. And just a legal opinion on this. where does the city stand on that?
I think, I agree with Captain Basteri and the chief that there are a lot of unanswered questions that we would probably need to explore in depth before we, had some concrete answers for you.
Okay. I mean, would it be advisable to have maybe a committee set in place to actually have these questions and answers done at that time, or how would you proceed with this?
I figured that you would probably refer it to the mayor's office, and then, he could ask, employees to look into it. I'm sure it would be the chief, my office, probably the chief of staff, and HR. That's what I would assume.
Would the sponsor be available for that as well, to actually have his input and,
Yeah, if that's however you refer it, if that's how
Okay.
you refer it, with that recommendation.
all right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other question for the city solicitor before we excuse her? Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Councilor Delasola?
Yes, question for the captain. The 300,000, the 500,000, was that based on every patrolman having their own camera?
Yes, that would be the size of our department, yes. But additionally, that would be the startup cost, but additionally, actually, the storage of the data is, because obviously the running all day long is what is usually is the most expensive part of it.
I was thinking, how many patrolmen do we have at night?
How many patrolmen?
On night, yes, night shift.
At night? Well, we have 102 on the department, police, so night shift would have,
Rough idea, I'm just,
yeah, probably 40 or so, depends on what specialty, specialized groups or so.
so if we got, instead of 108 cameras, if we got 50 of them,
Well,
everything mostly happens at night. To try it out with 50 cameras, only for the night guys, so when they come in, hang them up on a rack, when the night shift comes in, if it's a different gentleman, he grabs the camera and wears it at night. Instead of going from 500,000, you maybe get 250,000, at least have the cameras, like I said, after dark is when everything seems to happen in any city.
Again, obviously, depending how many you buy, the price drops and so forth. So, I don't know what the cost to buy 50 as opposed to the 100 is. But like you said, it's not obviously the cost, because, you guys are gonna be deciding on that. Like I said, the other issue is whether, can we go and record inside someone's house? Can we, does somebody want to come over and talk to us if we have a camera on? And do we give the officer permission to shut it off when he wants, turn it on when he wants? There is a lot of unanswered, questions. And like I said, we do not receive complaints of abuse. So what is the reason we're even going in this direction? We're not receiving the complaints. We don't have a history of it. Some departments, I know Methuen is probably a rougher area. Maybe they deal with more. I can only speak about our department, but I do know the state police, I think, did not want to do it, and I believe Boston Police may be the same.
I think we're trying to prevent something, and like Councilor Napolitano said, prevent it from happening. I know it could be 250,000, but I think me personally, it's money going somewhere good. I think it's all things we can look into. If we don't know the answers on, could we go into a house, or could we film someone talking? I would think, like the council said earlier, every city had these same questions, and they were answered at a certain point. So I think the first thing we have to look at is the union, if they'll allow it, step one, if they'll let us do it, with the rulings of, and we took, let's say Malden, how he has the cameras, in Methuen, and Revere and Chelsea, then we kind of combine them together and come up on our own plan.
Right, I don't know any other department that does have it, to be honest with you. But that's, we're only talking obviously about our concern, of what, like I said, we did look into it, the possibility. But it hasn't been discussed with the union, so I don't even know what their stand would be on it.
Sounds to me the mayor's office would have to do a little investigating if we do send it to them and let them take it from there and see what we can come up with. All right, thank you.
Council Mangan.
And if I could just add to that, that was my intention, is to get some information, to get some research. You know, I know our offices, we don't have issues with our office and incidents, and in no way would I suggest that this would keep our offices in check, okay? If there isn't an issue, that's not the problem here. The problem here is that as we continue to attract a lower grade of people from Boston and the suburbs there, our officers are more likely to find themselves in situations where they're antagonized or drawn into a situation. To be able to pull a tape and say where somebody accuses an officer of saying something and the tape says, no, that didn't happen, we've just protected their integrity. And that's what I'm looking at here. Protect themselves, but also give them a tool that will also allow them to be able to have maybe a higher conviction rate, okay? It's all about protecting the officers, and it's not about what happens today. It's about what happens tomorrow, or next week, or a year from now, or 10 years from now. And I think if we wait till something happens to make a decision, we're missing the boat. So, yeah, there's a lot of questions. But questions only get answered when somebody asks them, and that's what I'm looking to do, is just start the process of asking those questions. And if it turns out that it's not feasible for us, then it's not feasible for us. But I don't want to dismiss it out of turn.
Council Mangan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank Council Napolitano for bringing this. I think it's something that was, should definitely have a discussion about it, positive discussion. Right now, my particular feeling is based on what Boston not wanting it. I mean, I listened to Commissioner Evans. My whole thing is that when I look on the offices, I see a lot of things sometimes on TV that's perceived as the officer did this or the officer did that, and it's really not the point. And unfortunately, sometimes what we see is not what's actually happening sometimes. And I think any attorney or anybody else can turn around and make a cop look like, he was actually doing something wrong when he wasn't, just based on video footage. So that's my concern. My concern is that officers constantly being dragged into court because someone said they mishandled them wrong, whatever, and because the video footage shows it. And I think honestly, I think some of the police officers, not all of them, but I believe some of them may be apprehensive about doing certain things in terms of going in there, whether it's breaking up a fight or going in there, because they may be nervous being perceived that, how is this gonna look on, my camera and stuff, and some attorney's gonna rip into me, and so those are the concerns that I have, but certainly it's worth a discussion, but as it comes in right now, I certainly couldn't support it, but certainly I would like to see, as you said, have a good discussion about it and see what the do's and don'ts, because I certainly wouldn't wanna put, officers in a situation where now they're held liable because they put somebody on camera that shouldn't be on camera and so forth, so those are just my concerns, but I certainly applaud you for bringing this up.
Civil liability is one of the big items that are taught in the police academies. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, protecting what they do. Officers are on the line regardless. And as much as we try to raise our kids to have faith and confidence in the police, there are other families, other people that's not the case. And again, I don't think a camera would make an officer apprehensive from going in to do his job, because the camera had nothing to do with them getting the job in the first place. You have to have a certain desire to want to uphold the law and be in that position. It is in a lot of times a thankless job, and officers are commended for being out. I commend them for being out there and doing their jobs. If our research determines that this is a viable tool, then I think we ought to explore it. If it turns out it's not, then let's not. Okay.
Matters before you, gentlemen.
Yeah, could we refer this to the mayor's office and also have the city solicitor's opinion along with the Superior Officer Union and also the Patrolman's Officer Union involved with that discussion, along with the sponsor of this, so that he has full knowledge of what's being discussed. if I can make that in the form of a motion.
Motion's been made. Anyone second that motion?
Second that.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Excuse the customary, thanks.
We're going back to 3 is,
He's not here.
go back to, okay, well,
Five.
clerk, read item 5.
Right. Item number 5, this is a resolution by Council John Leo McKinnon, that a meeting with regards to Yarmouth Street, Ashton Street, and Coolidge Street on safety concerns.
Council McKinnon.
Could we have the city solicitor up before us, please?
Good
Could we just
evening.
have both your names and who you're representing tonight?
Colleen Mejia, I'm the city solicitor.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Silverstein. I am special counsel to the city on various matters.
Thank you. I just have a quick question on this. This was brought up in the past. There's been a number of things that have been going on at this one location. I wanted some comment on adverse possession as well as prescriptive easement. These two items were brought to our attention and said that there may be some type of action that could be taken on that. In your opinion, is that any reasonable action for anyone or the citizens that are in the surrounding community to take?
It's, like I've said before on numerous occasions, every time that you've asked us to come up to speak on this, it's a private property dispute that the city shouldn't be involved in. And I don't feel comfortable giving an illegal opinion to you, which seems as though it's going to be an illegal opinion to the residents and the abutters in that neighborhood. So I've spoken to one gentleman in particular, and I told him that if he feels like he has the right to use that road, then he should hire an attorney and file a claim.
Okay. Was it ever mentioned to that one individual that he could or could not win in court if he did that?
No, I would never tell somebody they could win in court.
Okay,
Did I tell him he may have an argument? Yes.
okay.
But I wouldn't tell him he would be successful. I don't know what a judge or a jury would decide.
Yeah, neither do I'll be honest with you. This has been going on for approximately a year, I think, or maybe longer. There's been incidents that have been there. This is usually a quiet neighborhood, and this has disrupted the whole neighborhood from what I can see. So, and understand. I've never had any issues down there at all with these people. So I'm just trying to look for avenues that maybe these both parties or whatever street could actually entertain and maybe discuss or talk or do something to that effect to actually resolve this matter. But I don't know if that's capable of actually being done right now. I know that we were waiting on plans from the Yarmouth Street individuals, something to the effect of trees, sidewalk, and possibly plants or something to that effect. And to date, I haven't seen that. So I don't know if we have received that or not, but.
Plans wouldn't come to my office. I don't give permits or anything like that, so I wouldn't know. But if they were creating this dead end on their own private property and it didn't require any kind of engineering permit or building permit under any of those codes, then we wouldn't require it. And I think what they've installed are bollards, and I checked with I asked the building and engineering, and there are no permits required for those particular bollards. So the owners of the way were within their legal right to install those.
Okay. And so right now, as it stands, they have these they're like poles that are in. And we were expecting something else. I think we were expecting a sidewalk and maybe a couple of trees or something like that to maybe liven it up a little bit, but.
Well, we
they-
can't force them to, you know, as long as there's no public safety concern with what they've installed, we can't force them to install a sidewalk or trees or.
Mhm.
or
Okay, is there a public safety concern with that?
I believe that both the police and fire departments had seen these bollards and they had no concerns.
They're okay with it?
Yep. And representatives from the fire and the police department are here, as you invited them. If
Yeah.
you'd like to speak to them,
I will.
they can answer those questions for you.
Yeah, okay, so you're under the assumption that they had no, concerns with that being blocked off or anything at that point. If there was to be an incident on that street and then no one could actually get down there for some reason or any reason, who would be responsible for that?
The property owners, and that would be a great question for the fire department or the police department to, probably more so the fire department, they're the ones who have the larger equipment.
Okay, so it would probably be on, the responsibility would lie on the property owners that are on that street, correct?
Yes, we have no ownership interest. I think we probably have a utility easement underneath the street. So, it's, if you think of it as a driveway, say, just for, just to give you a perspective as to how you can look at it, it would be the same idea, If public safety drove on your driveway and couldn't access it, you'd probably be held responsible for that. So kind of, if you can think of it like that,
Okay.
it's easier to understand.
I'm just, I'm trying to figure it out here, what's going on down that way, but I know that there's some issues that are happening, and once was a quiet neighborhood is now erupted. So, trying to find some solutions, but I don't think that we're going to find anything as far as a solution down there, because the way that we're proceeding is that we can just, it's a private way, we can do whatever we would like down there, and that's it. I know that when I'm trying to put on like an extension or something to my home, I have to go through a process. I know that's what I have to do. So I just don't understand the process that we're doing now, but.
Right, so if you're putting an
think-
extension on your home, that's under the building code. So the building code requires you to apply for a building permit and have the building inspector, under the code, make sure that your contractor is following whatever the rules are for that.
Okay, so if I wanted to make a, do not enter in my driveway, would I have to follow the same procedures or rules?
To post a sign?
Yeah,
No, you just post a sign.
just post a sign up, okay. And I believe that was done prior to that. I think that there were signs that were posted, and I don't know the magnitude of how far it went with that, so. But I think right now, we have, once a throughway is not a throughway no more, and it's a blocked off street with those pylons, and also there's like makeshift Jersey barriers that are like water barriers, I think, so I've seen it, and, I mean, that's not what we discussed before. I know that we discussed sidewalks, trees, and plants, but that's not what we have today. So, I'll yield, if anyone else says.
Counsel Capone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to our invited guests, thank you for being here. I just want to make sure that I understand the position. Obviously, you're the city's attorney, and the position I believe that you're taking is that the city doesn't have any ownership interest in the street, and thereby we really shouldn't be in the middle of it. Is that
Right, we consider it a private property dispute between.
similar to a boundary dispute?
Yeah, right.
And it may well be that we as a city can't do anything about it. It might have to come down to a court order to decide whether or not it's open or it's closed. The difficult thing is it's a neighborhood that was once quiet, now it's not. And I appreciate the position of the city, and I wouldn't ask you to render opinion one way or the other with regards to that, simply because of that position. I personally don't know exactly what the issues are on both sides. So after we get through the questions here, and I do have a couple of quick questions I want to get your opinion on, I would like to hear from the residents on this to know exactly what's the issue, because maybe even though we don't have a proprietary interest in maintaining the street, perhaps we could come up with a solution that could work for everybody, because we want the community to get back to where it was. The question I have for you, either one of you folks, is that I think there might be some misconception among the various parties here. And private doesn't necessarily mean exclusive. It just means that it's not an accepted street for whatever reason, right? Is that accurate?
A private way is what it sounds like. It's a private road. There are 3 ways in which a road can become a public road. And by public, I mean a road over which the city of Everett has some jurisdiction. It can be laid out and accepted, and you're all very familiar with that process. Planning board, council, plan gets recorded. And that could be a subdivision road. It could just be a road that the city owns or acquires the rights to put in a road, Air Force Road, as an example. Or it can become public by what's called prescription or adverse possession, which the councilor referenced a few minutes ago. And I'll come back to that just in a few moments. And the third way is really sort of something you don't really see. Prior to a certain date back in the 70s, actually earlier in the 1900s, if there was what's called dedication by the owner and acceptance by the city, it could be public. It's not anything you really see come up very often. Those are the 3 ways that it can become public. And there's a lot of case law out there that says whoever is claiming that a road should be deemed a public road, the burden is on them to demonstrate that by preponderance of the evidence. And so the presumption is that a road is not public. And here I think we have all the city records, as I'm informed, indicating this is not a City of Everett street. It's never been treated as a City of Everett street. It's been a privately owned road that the owners of that road have allowed residents of the city and others to use on occasion. So the question is, well, has it become public by virtue of that public use? And so I agree with the city solicitor. You wouldn't want in an open forum like this anyone rendering a legal opinion on something that could potentially come to litigation. But let me give you what the standard is, and you can draw your own conclusions. The standard is that the use has to have been open. Sure, I think we can probably agree that the use has been open here. It has to have been adverse, and what adverse means is the city of Everett and the people using it under the auspices of the city of Everett have used it under a claim of ownership. So has the city ever taken the position, has it appropriated funds to repair this, not under your private way repair ordinance, which you have in Article 17, but have you applied for Chapter 90 funds based on this road? Have you listed it as a public road? Has the city taken any of those overt actions that would suggest to those on the outside that the city considers this to be a city road? And so that's one of the crucial elements here. Has the city taken any of those types of actions that would suggest to the owners within the 20-year period, I'm sure you're all familiar, that type of use has to go on for 20 years uninterrupted. And the idea there is that the owners are then given the chance for 20 years to stand up and say, no, I don't want you to use my road. And if for 20 years the owner of a piece of land lets adverse use take place for that period of time, then the law says, all right, you've slept on your rights for long enough, And that's where the whole concept of adverse possession or prescriptive easement. And the only difference between adverse possession and prescriptive easement, just so everyone knows, is a prescriptive easement means you own the rights to use the land for a particular purpose, whereas adverse possession means you've acquired what's called fee, all of the property rights in the piece of land. So really, for purposes of a public way or a private way, it's not really a meaningful distinction. So that's really the analysis you would have to go through to determine whether or not it's become public by virtue of prescriptive easement or adverse possession. So going back to the councilor's question, what does private mean? Unless it's public, it's privately owned land, it's private land. Just like I could put a gate across my driveway, someone can put a gate across their land or a fence or anything else, certainly within the bounds of public safety. If someone's altering their residential land in a way that triggers some sort of code, then, for instance, if I own a 3-family and I decide that I want one of my units to only have one means of egress instead of 2, yeah, it's private, but I'm violating a code. So that's really what it comes down to here is, if this is private land, then the private property owner has the right to do what they want as long as it's not violating an ordinance or a code or some other regulation that would apply. And you have section 17.6 of your ordinances says you can't block a public way. You can't place anything in a public way that would obstruct it. And that's the term it used, any public way. So the city has not, I wouldn't want to render an opinion now as to whether you could pass an ordinance that says you can't keep people out of your private driveway or private common driveway or shared access way. But that's not what it says. And so I think that's really what you've been hearing from the city solicitor.
Okay. And to follow up on that, clearly if it were a dead end or if it were a cul-de-sac, we probably wouldn't even be having the conversation. It's because it's been a pass-through for so many years and people get accustomed to utilizing it that when you take it away, it raises some eyebrows. And I want to make sure that we have a meaningful discussion with the residents after you folks are no longer at the table. So the questions I have is that even though the city doesn't have a legal obligation to maintain the roadway, et cetera, if the road were to remain closed, trash removal, snow plowing, things, maybe trash removal might be one of the dicier ones, but snow removal for sure is probably more a means of a courtesy from the city as opposed to a requirement to enter on a public way and then plow it. Would you say? I just want everyone to have all the information so that when we talk about it, we can talk about it intelligently and know exactly what we're looking at.
I think the city council adopted the state law that allows you to plow private ways. But I think there's some language in there that talks about being able to access and all that. So if the DPW deems that it's inaccessible for that purpose, I think that they don't have to. However, I do believe that they plow that street themselves. I think I've been told that, but I'm not. I'm not quite sure.
So with the statute that was adopted, it's more of a discretionary thing as opposed to an
I believe
obligation.
so. From my recollection, I don't have it in front of me.
And how about trash removal, where you think of that as a basic necessity? If you start talking about a public way, does the city now have the discretion not to do trash collection? I'm not suggesting that we would, but I just want to know.
I think that we collected from all the private ways.
Okay.
So.
But not just this private way, every private way. I mean, is it discretionary within
I'd
the
have to
city?
look into that unless Jonathan knows off the top of his head if there's a statute that requires us to collect.
I don't believe so, and I think it's really a function of your contract with
Sure.
the waste hauler.
Okay. Because clearly folks on private ways are paying taxes, so they should be getting something for the taxes. But at the same time, you want to think about what the full exposure is to the city, what our obligations are. Obviously, we want everyone to get the maximum benefit from the community, and we want communities to be cohesive. So that was my question with regards to that. I don't have any further questions for either of you. Thank you very much. But when it comes up, I would very much like to hear from the residents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Mangan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no questions also, too. I mean, I think at this time, unless Council De La Sola does, if we could, okay, I was gonna say, have him excused, but if he has a certain question, but I'd like to hear from the residents individually to hear, what their concerns are and stuff. They all took the time to be up here, to come up here, so I'd like to hear from them individually to see what they have to say. But
Councilor McKinnon?
Was there any Chapter 90 money ever expended on, like, Yarmouth Street or?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to check with engineering.
Okay.
But I think we would have to have had that on the list specifically. Is that what you were alluding to, Jonathan?
Yeah, what I was alluding to was the question of when you seek Chapter 90 funds on an annual basis, you list all of public ways, because the calculation of the funds you get is based on the linear footage of all your public ways. You line them end to end. And so the question is, has Yarmouth Street been included in that calculation? That was, and that was just sort of one factor I threw out there, is sort of a way in which the city could assert, hey, we think we own this road, and we think this is a public way, so we list it on our there's a state statute that says you have to list all of your city ways. You list it on your Chapter 90 application.
Would that be private or public?
No.
Okay,
only
it would just be
ways.
public, okay. All right, thank you.
Councilor Mangan?
I just
Oh,
wanted to-
Councilor De La Sola?
A while back, when everybody was up here and this all started getting heated up, there was talk about a sidewalk and trees, and they were gonna get a price on it. I don't think by law they had to put a sidewalk or trees up there. And my question was there any complaints, I don't know if you even know, Colleen, to the city? We're talking about how the neighborhoods are crazy now because this all happened. What issues are going on down there, if you know, maybe a chief of staff could explain to me, what's going on since the barriers are up? What's happening down there that it's kinda, is it a safety issue or just?
I think it's just personality conflicts. It's nothing that the city's involved in. Police may have had to respond, but I think it's more personality conflicts than, there's no public safety issue in terms of the bollards being installed. Those aren't reasons why that's causing, I guess, the personality conflicts.
Correct. I'm just curious, what triggered, was it a safety issue that triggered this, all of a sudden have it blocked off?
I don't, you'd have to ask the owners of the street.
Okay.
We were just notified that they were doing it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilor Mangan?
Thank you. At this time, if there's no more questions, I'd like to excuse them, just have them stay in the audience, if there's any other follow-up questions. And if it's, well, I want to start with the residents first.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I don't.
It's my thing, Counselor, so
no.
if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear from the residents first, what they have to say, and then bring up the police and fire to just explain if everything is there legal, but I'd like to hear from the residents first. I mean, like I said, to see what everybody might, maybe we can get this resolved here tonight.
You can't do that
To
according to
hear from the
fire.
residents?
Oh, no, it may. Yeah, but if I may.
Councilor Capone?
If I may, I clearly don't want to step on anybody's toes, but, I mean, we have members of the fire department, police department present. I would prefer to hear them first and see if there is a public safety issue, and then the next step would be to hear from the residents as well, because that way, when we're speaking to residents, we'll be able to know if there are any safety issues, because there may not be. And if there aren't, then you go from there. But whatever the council wants to do is fine.
I will yield to Council Capone's, to have, when we call somebody from, I guess, the fire department, I guess, up first, representative from the fire department up.
Thank you, Counselor.
Give your name, please.
Captain O'Brien from the Fire Department.
Thank you. Councilor Capone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the fire department have an opinion one way or the other with regards to the current condition of the property with regard to safety issues?
So our only concern is that we have access for both fire apparatus and ambulances and personnel. And from at this point, there are no obstructions that prohibit us from getting down there.
Okay.
So the answer is no.
Okay, thank you. I have no other questions.
Councilor Mangan?
No, I have no questions either. That was all. And then I guess, we have a representative from the police
Excuse
department.
me,
who wants to
Councilor
speak on it.
Mangan?
Oh.
Councilor McKinnon, if you yield to him for the Councilor McKinnon has a question for you. Thank you, Councilor.
Right. Captain, so, have you seen the area itself? Okay, and there's no problem, no issues with that?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Excused. Thank you very much for your time. Councilor Mangan, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we have, is there anybody from the police department? I don't know. Captain Pasteri, if he has any input into this. Thank you.
How are you? I spoke to the,
Captain, yeah, if you could just, any public safety concerns, any issues down there?
no, I spoke to the chief before he came, and his only concern was before that it was properly marked and that there was, I think it was rebar in there holding, some of the things in place before. I went by today, it's been cleaned up, that's all been removed, it's properly marked, and chief has no concern at this point.
Thank you. I don't know if any of my colleagues have any questions. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move up, excuse the captain with the customary thanks.
If there are no other questions for the captain, excuse customary thanks. Thank you very much, Captain.
Mr. Chairman, if we could have,
Councilor Mangan?
thank you. Start, I guess, any resident here that wants to speak on it, come up for a few minutes. The name, I guess we can start right here, or any.
If I may from the chair, real quick, one quick question. If we could have our city solicitor in front of us, I just have a quick question about open meeting laws, all that kind of stuff. I want to hear from the residents. I
That's
truly
why we're
do.
here.
But I want to make sure we're not running afoul of anything.
We were just
If-
talking about this.
If we allow
Yeah.
everyone to speak, or if we find out how many folks are in favor, how many folks are opposed, and if it's a very large group in one direction or the other, if we had spokespersons for the group go up and speak, as long as we gave an opportunity for both sides to be heard, would we be okay
You specifically invited the residents.
of that area?
Yeah, so they're invited guests.
Okay. So they're free to speak?
Yes, you can invite them up. You
Okay.
invited them, so you can invite them up. We were
Okay.
just-
We don't
just had the
violate
same
any
discussion.
open meeting laws or anything of that
No,
nature?
it's not, you're not
Okay.
opening a public hearing. You're
Okay.
inviting these specific.
And these are the folks who were invited, so
residents.
they're meant to be here, same as we request
Right.
presence
I
of
mean,
City
you
Hall
could-
employee.
You could, as a body, say that you want a spokesperson
Okay.
from Yarmouth and then from the abutters if you'd like, but
Okay.
however you want to.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, Madam Solicitor. If we may, before we go forward, if we could please just have a show of hands of those folks that want to speak in favor of keeping it the way it is. Okay, so we have 4 folks there. So I'm assuming, I don't know who's in the audience and the other, those folks who want to speak against the current situation, could you please raise your hands? Okay, just one? I mean, you got 5 in total. I don't think there's any problem whatsoever hearing every single individual. But it's up to the body. Would you like to take it?
Just, I guess we could, come up individually, have their name, their address,
Sure.
and just, please, just be, as brief as possible, so we're not here for a while. Like I said, maybe a few minutes and just a quick summary from every individual.
Excellent point, Counsel. If we could try to keep the comments to a couple of minutes each, and then if time permits and we need to discuss it further, absolutely. Why don't we start with the folks who are in favor of keeping it the current way? And if you could, please state your name and your address, and then your reasons for wanting it the way it is.
This on?
Yep, when it's green, it's lit.
Jim Fiorello, 10 Yarmouth Street here in Everett. First of all, we've been dealing with the same questions for the last year. We've already told you all why we decided to close it down. Had a certain councilman for the ward contacted us last year when I tried to contact him numerous times in emails and never got a response, we decided that we had to go through the procedures that we did. And everything was done 100%. We went through the city, the lawyers, we did everything correctly. When we put these barriers up, they were temporary. We asked the city, what do you want? They told us, we put them up. Everything they've asked us to do, we've done. We put the trees up, but we were told we couldn't do sidewalks because it's on city property. If a sidewalk was put in, it was gonna be on city property. So, just wanna bring this up. Certain councilmen are making this a big deal about
Well,
all.
If we can, let's try to keep persons and personalities.
Okay,
out
I
of
got it,
Let's-
I got it.
Let's speak to the heart of the issue.
All right, all right.
Why is it that you feel it should be up
Because
there?
it was a safety issue.
Okay.
It was a safety issue. I saw my next-door neighbor's child within a foot almost get killed by a car going down the wrong way. It was a safety issue because people were constantly coming up down the street, going down a one-way and didn't care. It was a safety issue because it was a short street, and when they knew they were going down a one-way, they sped up real fast to get to the other side. It was a safety issue because we have a handicapped child on the street, and people from coming up Ashton Street, when the child was being unloaded from the handicap bus, they would go around it, almost hitting her twice. That's what the issue was. And let's make it real simple. This is a personality conflict between two individuals. No one's complaining. We didn't stop them from getting off their street. They come, Ashton Street's a one-way going up. We didn't allow them not to get back up on Ferry Street or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I was part of the discussion with the police department, and it was a big mistake for years that when you went up Ashton Street to take a left, they had cars parked right on the corner. Police never did nothing. Now they put up a sign. They can get out of their street, go up the street. Since we put this in, the traffic on Coolidge Street in the school department in Ashton Street has calmed down dramatically. Everybody's now following the laws, especially down at Edith Street Park. But I would appreciate that everybody I've talked to, I talked to you one time, not too long ago.
Let's just keep
All right,
keep addressing
all
everything
right, I'm
with me.
sorry.
That's okay.
We-
I understand.
We've
it's
gone
emotional.
through this, and we maintain the street.
Mm-hmm.
My father plowed it since 1964. I've been plowing it for the last 24 years. I sweep the street, and a few of us, we take care of the street. Now, if you want to try to take our trash removal away, I'll figure that one out. But
I don't think anyone wants to do that.
we repair our street.
Right,
When
in a
the
private
ci-
way you do. Yep.
When the city came down to fix Coolidge Street, and, not the city, the gas company, they destroyed our street 10 feet in. They cracked it. When I called up the city and wanted to have them responsible for them to fix it, you know what they told me? It's a private way. Fix it yourself. Guess who fixed it? I did.
Let me ask you a quick question. It may not satisfy the purposes. I understand safety, clearly. And I understand it's right by a school area, there's a heavy flow of traffic. And I'm not even saying this is feasible. I'm just trying to understand the
It'll
concerns.
never work. I know what's coming out.
Speed bump?
We're not putting a speed bump in the street.
Okay.
First of
That-
all, it's illegal.
Yeah. Well, it's a private way.
It's illegal. I already looked into
If
it.
it were feasible, if everyone
That wasn't
signed
the
off
issue.
on it.
That's not the
No, I'm
issue.
just asking.
Speed bump ain't going in.
It's
How
not
are we
gonna-
gonna plow it?
Well, the speed bump would not fix the safety concerns.
No. They'll still do it. They're coming down, up the street on Ashton Street, there happens to be a barber shop. It's on Ferry Street. It's right across Ashton Street. That barber shop caters to a lot of people in our city, but a great majority outside our city. They don't care. They do what they call the loop-de-loop all the time, looking for a parking space up on Ferry Street in front of the barber shop. And they go, when it was a one-way, we'd have 17, 18, 20 cars coming down the wrong way. When they realized it was a one-way, they would speed up. And we're not talking 10, 20 miles an hour. You're talking a short street. And when they put the foot to the metal, they really go and they screech on the brakes to get to the end. So keep this all in mind, Mr. President, whatever you call yourself now, here.
It's a short-term title.
This is no one was complaining.
Okay.
Only one person was complaining. It was a personality conflict between two individuals. We would not have the problems that we have on that street, even though we closed it, if it wasn't for one individual here. We would not have these problems, guaranteed. Because we talked to all the neighbors. We would not have these problems. And we would have no problems. A certain councilman indicates that there's a lot of problems down here. Not once in 1 year did we cause them. Not once.
All right, well, thank you very much, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the current situation? If you could, just please state your name and your address.
Good evening, Councilman. Joe Senna, 38 Coolidge Street. I abut Yarmouth Street. I'm on the corner. The side of my house goes down in pretty good ways down Yarmouth Street. I've been there since 1974. I bought the house about 13, 14 years ago. And back when we first bought the house, it predated the school going in at Oneida Street, the Lafayette School. Since that time, we've seen an increase in traffic and an increase in lack of parking. So what we got is we got a situation where the people that couldn't find a parking space to pick up their kids repeatedly would go up Ashton, down Yarmouth, down Coolidge, just make that continuous loop. And it was like a merry-go-round. When you had that, and then you had kids walking home from school, plus the residents, Yarmouth Street has no sidewalks. It's only 31 feet wide. You could not possibly put sidewalks and allow a car to park and have a car to pass. Okay? So you've got kids walking in the street, you've got people flying around the corners, and it just created a huge issue. Like Mr. Fiorello said, we had a neighbor's child almost get hit by a car. We have a wheelchair van that picks up and drops off a resident on the other corner, opposite corner of me. And with the ramp, I've seen people drive around that ramp as they're loading this child in and out of the van. It's insane because they're too much in a hurry to wrap back around the corner to take safety, public safety into consideration. I don't know where there's a safety concern, why I'm even here going over the same thing I went over several months ago. The public safety concern, we alleviated by making this a dead end, okay? The problems arise more from a personality conflict and more from a guise of convenience. Under the guise of public safety. We've got a select group on a street that doesn't like the fact they have to go up to the top of Ashton and look left and look right before they can get on Ferry if they want to get back down toward Edith. They're over just force of habit, and I understand convenience. It was easier to take the left down Yarmouth. But we had to do something about it. I've got two small kids riding their bikes more times when we turned it into a one-way. You teach your kids to look both ways. Kids have a habit, if they know they're on a one-way street, they look the way they expect the traffic to come. I have a child, she's 10 years old. A couple of years ago, she was riding her bike. Someone went down the wrong way. She was looking the other way. Luckily, she heard the car and was able to get out of the way. But we shouldn't have to live like this on a street because other people like the convenience of going down a private way. It was made a one-way for a reason, and that reason didn't work. So we had to make a decision in the best interest, not only of the residents of the street itself and the abutters, but for the neighborhood kids that walk home from the Lafayette, that use that street on their way up towards Point South, up toward Ferry Street, because you've got a combination of a skinny street, the mom's spinning around the corner, the kids walking. It was a perfect storm. Now, add in the winter, the snowbanks, the street gets even skinnier. I've seen kids have to climb snowbanks to let kids by before we made this a closed street. This was done in the name of public safety. And I think it's worked relatively well, with the exception of a personal attack that we have going on, which I have nothing to do with. I want this because it works. It works for the neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anybody else would like to speak in favor of it? All set? Do we have anyone who wants to speak against the current situation? Come on up, sir. If you would, please state your name and address, and if you could, just speak to the issue as opposed to anything else, and please keep all of your comments to the chair. I would appreciate that. Thank you. Good.
My name is John Worcester, and I live at 58 Ashland Street for the past 30 years. And this whole thing started with was a school problem. It was when school got out in the morning and when they got out in the afternoon. And my solution would just be put signs at both ends of the street, Yarmouth Street. Do not enter between 7 and 8 and 2 and 3 when school's going in, and, you know, before school and after school. That's what we were gonna do before. That was the whole issue to begin with, was the school. Just like they have down at, the Park Street there. It says, do not enter during school hours, 7 to 8, and 3 to 4, 2 to 3. We should do the same thing on Yarmouth Street. Put those signs up. That should be the end of it. Anyone who goes down there, give them a ticket. That would put them on both ends of the street, Yarmouth Street, both ends. When school, you know, 7 to 8 and 2 to 3. Don't come down this street, nobody. Unless, you know, unless you live there. That was the whole issue in the first place, to begin this whole situation. Then, this past winter, you talk about safety. I watched a fire truck and a cruiser, couldn't make it up the top of Ashland Street. They both had a back all the way down. They couldn't make it. It was a pumper truck, an heavy one, whatever, but couldn't make it. Couldn't get out to Ferry Street at the back all the way down. I watched them. I stood right outside. Could not get up there. I have, this is some pictures of the barricades he has out in front of the street there. It's not a good overview, but give you an idea what it looks like. My wife took those pictures from inside her car. She was afraid to get out and take them. So that's why they look like that. And it seems like it might be a slam dunk down here too, where they put the barricades up and everything. And Paul, the guy right in the corner of Yarmouth and Ashton's, got a brand-new sidewalk in front of his house. Isn't that convenient? What is that all about?
Let's just keep it
All
to
right.
the issue. Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
I want to, again, just put the signs up, 7, 8, 2 to 3, do not enter when school's in session, and that's it. That's all we had to do in the first place. We didn't have to go this far. And I just wanted to, I don't know, you guys could have this, because I don't think I'm gonna get anywhere with this. You could read it if you wanted to. This is about the preceptive easement law. I have copies, you could have that.
Okay.
After 20 years, you're not supposed to be able to do what they're doing. I've been here for 30 years, it's been open up until last year, 30 years. And maybe before that, before I moved in. And in the barricades and the lolly columns he has put in the road out there, and the Jersey barriers, those plastic ones, there's not one person in here, none of you guys, would ever have that across the street from your house. Never in a million years. It would be gone the next day. That's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody for coming up and expressing your opinions. Councilors, what's the, I'm sorry, would you like to speak in, please come on up and introduce yourself and list your name and your address, please.
George Barton, 21 Coolidge Street. I don't have an issue with it. I'm neutral on what's going on down there, I don't know. My issue is with the snow plowing, number one. And, well, actually, we talk about public safety. people now are backing down that street continuously. They're backing, stopping, backing down, they're coming down Coolidge Street. A lot of people are coming up Coolidge Street, the wrong direction, making a U-turn on that street going down. But you said it's a private way and they do their own plowing. Well, when they put the barriers there, I figured, well, okay, now they're gonna plow down to the barriers. No, they plow out to Coolidge Street. This has been going on, I lived on Coolidge Street 27 years. There was a vacant lot there. Now there's a house there. It's tough parking on Coolidge Street, especially in the winter, when the odd even parking. Last year, we had 100 inches of snow. It was the odd side parking. They plow down, build a huge snow mound there. That plows have to go around, which increases it, minimizes, narrows Coolidge Street. Because the plows have to continuously go around that mound. And I've called the police, nothing they can do, they tell me. So I think this is a more of a safety issue than, I don't know. I never really used that street too much when it was open. But it is convenient with the school down there, where they park on both corners. It makes it a little easier to go around at 2 o'clock. But I don't know if there's any kind of an ordinance about plowing like that. I don't think I could plow my driveway out across into my neighbor's, which is what's going on, so. That's just my, I don't know what can be done about that.
Thank you very much. Anybody else want to speak? I'll make sure we include everyone.
Can I answer the question?
Well, hold on, let me see what the council wants to do, and we'll give you an opportunity if they're so inclined. Anyone else want to speak on the matter who has not spoken yet? If it's the will of the council, we could have the gentleman forward. You want to address specifically about plowing? If whatever the council would like to do, would you like to have him forward? If you'd please come forward. If you could, just one more time, name and address for the record, and if we could just limit the comments specifically to the
Yes.
plowing issue.
It's Jim Fiorello, 10 Yarmouth Street, Everett. Yes, he is correct. Years ago, it was an empty lot where a house is now. And for years, they would take, it was open, and the trucks from the city would come up Ashton, down Yarmouth, and do a little path and throw that snow across the street. Since that has since the new house has gone in, I do all the plowing on the street. Not once have I ever put snow in front of what he's talking about across the street. Our street is designed where it's only 31 feet long. We take the snow and bring it up to the corner of Yarmouth Street. I stop short of 8 feet, 10 feet, and then we build our mounds backwards on both sides, the same thing with the other end of the street. Here's the problem. Coolidge Street is never done right. And let's talk about the snow as far as Coolidge Street goes. They come down the street, the city trucks, they're 4 or 5 feet off the curbs. They just go down the center, and before you know it, you've got these big mounds that are 4 or 5 feet into the street, and it becomes a narrow street. We don't do a good job going to the curbs, never have. And that's one of the issues on Coolidge Street. But I can assure you, all of you, I do the plowing. I never put snow on Coolidge Street. However, if they come down Coolidge Street and they block us in, where we have to get out, you can rest assured, I take that snow, I drag it back into Yarmouth Street, and I throw it in our mounds. So, I just wanted to answer that.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
No, that's good. All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Has everyone spoken on this issue that wishes to do so? All right, councilors, what's the pleasure? Council McKinnon, what would you?
Refer back to sponsor.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second, refer back to sponsor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? If so moved. I believe that was the last piece of business. A motion to adjourn would be in order. Is there a motion? We have a second? Okay, it's moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor? All opposed? You have so adjourned. Thank you.